Atrial fibrillation, irregular heartbeat, arrhythmia of the atria, that is, a bad rhythm in the atria. Abnormal propagation of electrical impulse through the atria. The atria quiver instead of pump, causing poor blood flow to the ventricles and clotting, because the blood just sits there and clots. Ventricles may beat faster with irregular rhythm in order to compensate for the lack of fill. Quivering in a AFib heartbeat doesn't allow the ventricles to fill, but the uniform contraction of a regular heartbeat does. Atrial fibrillation has three types. There's paroxysmal, which starts and stops on its own, lasts minutes to days. The people who have paroxysmal atrial fibrillation are generally the ones that feel the symptoms. There's persistent, which requires treatment to stop, and permanent, which cannot be stopped on its own. One type progresses to the next. Cause of atrial fibrillation, more common with increasing age. 5% of Americans have atrial fibrillation, 2% of Americans who have atrial fibrillation under 65, 9% are over age 65. Coronary heart disease, bypass surgery, medication, heart disease, hypertension, hypothyroidism, sixth sinus syndrome, pericarditis, alcohol use, other toxic exposure. Generally, these are things which put a lot of strain on the heart. Symptoms of atrial fibrillation: irregular, rapid, racing, pounding, arrhythmic, fluttering, or heartbeat too fast or too slow. Confusion, fainting, dizziness and lightheadedness, shortness of breath, inability to exercise, fatigue, and many people are asymptomatic or have no symptoms. Hey Dad, can you tell us about any of the circumstances that may have led up to you being diagnosed with atrial fibrillation?
I don't know. I don't about anything different then than I am now. It didn't make any difference. It was just right before I had it go on. I was sort of tired all the time, and I had swam in the morning, and then I went to the doctor and took a physical, and he found the atrial fibrillation on my EKG when he gave it to me. And they called the heart doctor, and he put me in the hospital, and they said I had a real low heart rate beat, and they put a pacemaker in, and everything's been fine ever since. That's been 11 years ago, and I had my heart checked about 6 or 8 months ago with a, I forget what it's called, but anyway, they checked it, and I had no more buildup, and I've been fine ever since.
Okay, and that was 11 years ago they did that?
Yes.
And how old are you now?
I can't hear you.
How old are you now?
I'm 77.
Okay, and were you on any medication or anything like that, or had you had any other heart trouble prior to that?
Only I was taking allopurinol for the gout, and I was taking the what's the one you take for cholesterol, Zocor.
Oh, okay, all right, for high cholesterol, right. But
Yeah.
okay, so you're all fine now, right?
I'm fine now. Yes, no problem.
Okay, good. All right, thanks, Dad. So in the normal heartbeat, gap junctions allow propagation of electrical signals through the atria, and therefore the contraction of the myocardial tissue, which is the heart muscle, uniformly. In a normal EKG, it's characterized by 3 peaks of a symmetric, rhythmic, and consistent presentation: the P, the QRS, and the T. The P wave is the atrial contraction or depolarization, right here. The QRS, the ventricular contraction, the depolarization of the ventricles, is QRS, and it's narrower in the normal heartbeat. The T, which is ventricular repolarization, is right here. This usually follows in a consistent, uniform manner. Sometimes speeds up when you run. Atrial fibrillation is an arrhythmic heartbeat. Faulty electrical propagation doesn't go to the atria at the same time, causing uniform contraction. Instead, non-uniform contraction, right here, not here, not here, and certain parts causing that quiver. EKG in atrial fibrillation, the atria beat very fast and quiver. The ventricles beat normal, fast, or slow. The P wave is absent and replaced by an F wave. The QRS wave may be widened as compared to the normal EKG where the QRS wave is much more narrow. You can see it's not rhythmic either, it just eventually gets wider and wider. In atrial fibrillation, structural and electrophysiological changes on tissue and cellular levels are self-perpetuating, meaning that the restructuring of the heart tissue reinforces further restructuring because that bad wave rhythm and electrical impulse movement changes the structure of the heart. Age and disease are the main cause of it. Scarring, changes in myocardial tissue, and non-uniform decrease in the resting potential, meaning it takes different amounts of energy impulses to the cells to get them to contract and fire again. Also, cause changes on a cellular level in ion channel functioning. Paroxysmal leads to persistent, leads to permanent atrial fibrillation because it's progressive due to that restructuring. Permanent atrial fibrillation cannot be fixed.